Hello, welcome to Roy's Book Reviews. Today I am going to discuss the novel The Club Dumas by Arturo Pérez-Reverte, or Reverte. And the Dumas in the title is, of course, Alexandre Dumas, the author of The Three Musketeers and The Count of Monte Cristo, classics such as that. The Club Dumas is an absorbing read, particularly if you have interest in the topics of the occult, the life and writings of Alexandre Dumas, or perhaps most of all, if you're interested in the early history of book producing. I'm talking way back when books were not mass-produced, certainly not on demand on a digital press, such as many of them are printed today, but instead lovingly created with the finest of materials that were built to last. The main character in the Club Dumas is a man named Corso. He's a rare bookfinder for hire. If you happen to be a rich collector of books looking for a first edition, printed and bound centuries ago, Corso is your guy to track it down and obtain it by any means you're willing to pay for. There's a dual track of investigation going on in the Club Dumas. One has to do with locating the 3 known copies of a book entitled The 9 Doors. Allegedly, this book can be used by someone who can figure out how to properly read it to summon Satan and be granted whatever is desired, at the cost of your soul, of course, for eternal damnation. But in the process of tracking down these books, Corso keeps encountering people who appear to have been lifted right off the pages of The Three Musketeers. Clues suggest that Dumas perhaps sold his soul to the devil in exchange for the literary acclaim and riches and life of debauchery that he enjoyed prior to eventually dying penniless, but with his name living on forever due to his literary success. I have yet to read The Three Musketeers, and I just recently read The Count of Monte Cristo for the first time. So that had me very much interested in checking out works about or involving Alexandre Dumas and the stories that he wrote. He's an interesting figure in literature for certain, and made even more interesting to me when I learned that he was of mixed race. Typically, if you're reading a book from the 1800s, published serially or otherwise, whether you're reading it for a class or perhaps just for your leisure, you're reading the work of a white male author. Alexandre Dumas is an exception who had some cream in his coffee, or vice versa, however you choose to look at it. But I digress, as I like to do in my reviews here. The atmosphere of Arturo Pérez-Reverte's novel is shrouded in literary fog from the opening pages. In those pages, we learn that a book collector has been found hung. Perhaps suicide, perhaps something more sinister, we're not sure. And it keeps being a book that you're not quite sure who's behind the strange things taking place down to the very last page. In between the first and last page, we follow Corso around as he tracks down the 3 copies of The 9 Doors, doing his best to avoid and survive interruptions from curious characters who seem to have something to do with his quest, but we're not quite sure what. Among them are 2 women, one who fits the type that Alfred Hitchcock loved to cast in his movies, the platinum blonde, and the other improbably too young to be so improbably wise and so improbably proficient while being remarkably detached from the proceedings and also being ridiculously sexy. The latter woman is named after a character from the world of Sherlock Holmes. So she's borrowed from the fictional world of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. That's one of my favorite literary places. I'm a huge Sherlock Holmes fan. So we have some Alexander Dumas, we have some Satan stuff, and we have some Sherlock Holmes stuff, and we're like, what's going on and how are these things connected? So readers plow through to find out what the deal is. Back to the women characters I just mentioned, pretty much every sentence describing either one of them lustfully describes how sexy they are. If that sort of thing annoys you, consider yourself warned. If a storyline that touches upon devil worship and sword-wielding musketeers and Sherlock Holmes and the business of producing books without modern technology, or forging books in modern times with ingenuity and patience, if you're a fan of books about books, then perhaps you'll forgive the women characters in this book who are described largely as sex objects. These women do serve critical roles in the plot and not simply sexual conquest. But the repetition, we get it, she's hot, and the stilted nature of some of the dialogue made me, in my review at Goodreads, go with 3 stars rather than 4. But whether the number of stars may or may not be important to you, what's important is, does the subject line grab your attention, and does the author hold your interests from beginning to end? And I feel that the author of the Club Dumas accomplished his goal. I won't go into spoiler territory other than to say I really enjoyed the Club Dumas. I'll simply say that I found the ending to be both cleverly satisfying and a little less than what I hoped was being built up to. Now, apparently, the movie The Ninth Gate, starring Johnny Depp, is loosely based on this novel. It's not something I knew at the time that I was reading the book, even though I was vaguely familiar with The Ninth Gate. I may or may not have seen it. I can't remember. So either I haven't seen the movie adaptation yet, or else the adaptation is so loose that there wasn't strong enough of a connection for me to realize that, hey, I'm reading a story that I'm already familiar with. I've already seen this story. So I will have to watch or rewatch The Ninth Gate and see, how much alike and how much different they are. But you're not here for a movie review, you're here for Roy's book reviews. Overall, I was fully sucked into the universe of the Club Dumas. Give me a literary, historical mystery with otherworldly elements, and you'll hook me every time. I'm already looking forward to the next story of this nature, whatever it will be. So if you have any suggestions of books that revolve around the world of books, the world of Sherlock Holmes, the world of Alexander Dumas, drop a line in the comments. I'm always looking for suggestions, along with giving you my recommendations of what I think you thoroughly enjoy, perhaps as much as myself, perhaps even more, perhaps a little less. But until then, I will wish you, as always, happy reading.